Welcome back to another official Narrative Assassin update video with your host, yours truly, Hussein Hill. Great to be back with you guys once again. This video is coming out later than I initially anticipated it to do so. Ever since my last video, I have been slacking on doing the content on the best of, on a very regular and precise sort of scheduling and releasing. So I apologize for that. This video will most likely be coming out on Friday, so stay tuned for that. In this video, we'll be discussing all things Iran. We'll be discussing the most up-to-date information we have with regards to the impact of the Iranian war. We'll be discussing exactly why the Iranian war is occurring. And I also want to go into some of the things that are not really being discussed by anyone who's discussing this on YouTube, or at the very least, very few people who are discussing this on YouTube specifically, like what narratives to avoid when engaging with this conversation of Iran, of Israel, and the implications that there are with regards to Israeli and, we'll say, Jewish involvement, promulgation of, we'll say, propagandizing of this conflict with Iran. So we're going to be discussing all that in today's update video, in today's show. Before we do that, we're going to go briefly into logistics. So, as I mentioned earlier, been kind of slacking on getting my video content out there at the beginning of each week. Like I said, the last video update, I released it around the same time that I'm releasing this video. It was released on a Friday. So this video is going to be released on a Friday, I guess, as well, too. I do want to try getting back to, again, maybe you can get another week to let this video season, let this episode and or video season, and get back to releasing videos at the beginning of the week. With that said, guys, of course, make sure you always follow me on X as well as Rumble. Make sure to, when you're on X, when you follow me on X, make sure to tune in for the official NA or Narrative Assassin spaces, which are held usually Wednesday and Friday, 7 p.m., between 7:30 p.m. Eastern and 8:30 p.m. Eastern every week. This week, however, we're going to be doing a show or a live space on X from Thursday till Friday. Or sorry, from Thursday till Saturday. So this video, if you're watching this video and you haven't been in the space, then you missed the space. So that's what that is. But make sure to check out the video on Friday and Saturday. Or sorry. Make sure you check out the space, the X space rather, the NA official space on Friday and Saturday. Make sure to tune in for that. Also, my most recent op-ed is finally out. And you can find it at America First Initiative Substack. Please go over there to make sure to follow them. They'll be in the description below. I'll be pushing them every single video that I release here on YouTube and Rumble. Make sure to follow American Initiative for my Substack articles. After this, I do have another article coming out as well. After the next article that I'm going to be publishing, I will probably be taking a break, but I will be looking to do more op-eds going forward as well. So I'll be taking a little bit of a break and concentrating on other things, but stay tuned for more future Substack articles from America First Initiative. This particular op-ed is revolving around the failures of the right wing, which will be kind of addressed in this update video as well, to a certain degree. But the broad failures of the right wing, go check it out. What else? I think that's all we have for any specific logistical updates. If you guys like the channel, you guys like the brand here for Narrative Assassin, if you guys like watching the show, make sure to go in the description below and consider donating either at buymeacoffee.com/Hussein Hill or to become a month-to-month follower of my work and a month-to-month, we'll say, subscriber or rather donator of my work, donation of your choice, or you can go for one-time donations only. Go to Cash App at is it NA? NAH Hill 86. Yes, NAH Hill, or NAH Hill 86, I do believe. Hold on. I hate doing this live. Or I do this on the show. I should know this. Sorry. I'm tired, man. It is not. Yes, NAH Hill 86. I say it every single show. I should remember this. NAH Hill 86. I'm sorry, guys. Very tired. But make sure to do all that. Go to replies, follow, donate, support please make sure you do all of that. And with that said, we're going to get right into the conversation of this update video, of this episode of NA Update Videos. So, as we all know, we have been thrusted into a war with Iran. This is a conversation that has been being had really ever since honestly for years, let's be quite frank. This conversation has been in the political discussion for years, but it really hit a fever pitch specifically recently. It became more of a conversation really under the Trump years, really honestly from 2016 till now, 2026, is the conversation with war with Iran and the endeavors of the Middle East have really become more pronounced under the Trump years, the post-2016 victory of Trump and the subsequent years therein. And more specifically, during the 2024 election. During the 2024 election, Nicholas J. Fuentes in particular, and we're going to be kind of circling back around on this topic about how important it is to identify who was actually advocating against this before recently, because that's going to be a huge conversation going forward for anyone to kind of keep their head above water, to kind of sort of navigate the rhetorical and political ops that will surely be thrown your way in the next few years from now to 2028 and onward with regards to electoral politics, with regards to coalition building, when people are trying to kind of build these coalitions, build these networks to challenge the Zionist right, to challenge the Republican Party, to challenge the hegemonic establishment right wing. However, Nicholas J. Fuentes in particular, I would say almost exclusively Nicholas J. Fuentes, and the subsequent Graper movement, the subsequent America First movement, was the premier coalition that specifically called out the probability, the certainty that if Trump were to win in 2024, which he did, that he would bring us to war with Iran. And the reason why he understood this was because he saw the backing of the Trump administration. He saw who was backing Trump's campaign. He saw who funded Trump's campaign. He saw the pivot and it really wasn't a large pivot. One can make the argument that Trump has been somewhat allied with Zionism since 2016. If you look at, for example, Roger Stone, who met with Bibi Netanyahu and other Israeli officials and Zionist sort of operatives back in 2016. You look at like Laura Loomer. These figures have been around the Trump phenomenon since the beginning. You can even argue with Milo Yiannopoulos. Now, Milo Yiannopoulos has recently sort of changed his tune, where he is now countering the interests of Israel. He's now a counter-Zionist, but he's one of these civic nationalist counter-Zionists who's trying to divorce Zionism from Jewry, even though he's like an ethnic Jew who's become a Catholic, but he's also a alleged ex-homosexual who, by all accounts, is still engaging in homosexuality and many other nefarious, perverted things. But we digress from that conversation. Today, focus on this conversation. Nevertheless, you can make the argument that since 2016, the MAGA movement has had some element of Zionism within it. You can make that argument. However, there was a deliberate, at least rhetorically speaking, there was a deliberate attempt by the Trump campaign in 2016, we'll say leading up, roughly speaking, to 2018 and 19. There was at least an attempt, to a certain degree, to at least posture against being slavishly in line with or slavishly subordinated to Israel. Obviously, again, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Moving, the initial strikes that happened in the first term with the Trump administration. There were obviously some things that happened in the first term of the Trump administration, or the first term of the Trump administration, the first term of the Trump campaign. I don't really know. The first term of Trump in his decades-long career as a politician or the president of the United States or a presidential candidate, however you want to qualify that, there were some obvious moves and maneuvers that were obviously at the behest of and that were meant to aggrandize the Israeli Zionist interest. However, specifically in 2024, we saw him double down. We saw the Trump campaign, the Trump administration, and the MAGA movement double down in its subordination to Israeli interests. And it really all started to kind of culminate, quite frankly, at the fever pitch, at the height of the indictments facing Trump. somewhere around the height of the indictments facing Trump, as well as the failed assassination attempt in Butler that occurred against Trump, we saw specifically that around that time, these Israeli little tech types, people like, people who are, tied with or sympathetic towards Israel, but are also wrapped up into this Palantir Peter Thiel thing. All these like little tech oligarchs, these Israeli apparatchiks, whether they be Democrats like Bill Ackman or just long-term single-issue voters like Miriam Adelson, many others, Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin. We saw all these sort of actors kind of coalesce specifically around Trump in the wake of this, and we saw the Trump administration move in a direction that was very explicitly pro-Israel. And we saw that, even with regards to the Butler assassination attempt, there were rumors coming out immediately, almost a day after, that Iran was responsible for that assassination attempt. No credible evidence, no coherent, logical, there was no coherence to that claim. It was just being thrown out there. The Zionists were promulgating that, and many of the MAGA loyalists, many of the MAGA voters and base bought into that. And they said, well, if they try to kill me, we're destroying Iran, we're going to war with Iran, we're killing everyone, and there will be nothing left. So we saw this kind of buildup. Many of us who were paying attention, many of us who've been following the Trump administration since day one, whether we were loyal to Trump, begrudgingly so, or we were completely jaded with Trump by the middle of the first term, we all understood, we all have been seeing this buildup for at least a decade, for a decade, roughly speaking. But before we keep exploring that conversation, because we're going to continue to build on the necessity for understanding the patterns with regards to what's happening with this conversation with Trump and Israel and Zionism and Iran and all these sorts of things. Before we continue that line of discourse or analysis, I want to briefly just go over some of the material, what we had to date, and I think the best outlet that's been doing I would say the best work on this. If others have any better outlets to pull from, please put them in the comments below or the replies below, comment section below. But the best outlet that's been tracking this, I think, has been NPR. So here are just some numbers. Here are just some numbers and a bit of information of the scope of the costs that the Iran war has given us since its beginning. So this is all aggregated from NPR. I've been using NPR as a good source for posting the Federalist on the Federalist as well. Make sure you follow the Federalist Press on X, TFP. I've been using NPR as a good source to track a lot of the developments in the Iran war on the TFP X account. But here's just some information, some numbers to throw at you about what's happening, the costs that the world is having to eat, along with Iran and Israel itself and the broader global community with regards to this conflict. Iran casualties. Iranian officials report over 1,300 deaths, while some reports suggest over 6,000 military personnel killed and 15,000 plus wounded. Israeli/U.S. casualties, at least 18 people killed in Israel and 13 U.S. service members killed. Now, it's terrible that U.S. members are being killed at all, which we'll kind of build in that conversation later on in this update video in this show. Nevertheless, the casualties of the West and Israel pale in comparison to the casualties of Iran. That's just something to keep in mind. Infrastructure impact, over 25 Iranian hospitals. Infrastructure impact, over 25 Iranian hospitals damaged or out of service. Military actions, over 12,000 bombs dropped by Israel, over 6,000 U.S. combat missions, and 100 plus Iranian naval vessels sunk. Displacement, up to 3.2 million people temporarily displaced in Iran, and 83,000 people displaced from Lebanon. Key and regional impact, Lebanon, at least 773 to 850 people have been killed in Lebanon. Conflict scope. This conflict includes strikes across 10 to 12 plus countries in the region. Naval and air conflict. Iran has carried out 300 plus missiles or done attacks across the region. We also know that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The Strait of Hormuz, as everyone should know, you should know at this point at least, is the main the main global choke point, particularly the maritime global choke point for natural gas and global oil, or liquefied natural gas and global oil. So that is the rough sort of damage that we have, and what we can surmise from that information is very clear. We are completely decimating. We've conflicted mass casualty damage on the nation of Iran. We've also killed U.S. servicemen in the process, and we are helping to destabilize the region. And we are actually, broadly speaking, creating a ripple effect globally of destabilization of the global economy, destabilization of distribution of necessary goods like oil, gas, etc. We are destabilizing the globe in this endeavor to go to war with Iran. Now, what is the reason that we're being told that we're going to war with Iran? The reason that we're being told that we're going to war with Iran, the number one reason is synonymous with, it is one-to-one with the rationale that was given to all of us back with the Iraq war. It's because of global terrorism. We are going to war with Iran, allegedly, because Iran is the number one sponsor of global terrorism. The unfortunate part about that claim is that is empirically false. It is empirically false. It is empirically false that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism. We can basically debunk this assertion by just one simple question: when is the last time that there has been a terrorist attack on American or Western soil that has been directly tied to Iranian backing? The only threat that Iran faces to anyone is a threat to Israel. Iran funds the antagonists, the regional enemies of the state of Israel. Iran there has never been a certified point-by-point case of terrorism on American soil directly tied to Iran. That has never happened. And everyone knows it's never happened. Furthermore, Iran is not a regional threat to America. It poses no direct regional threat to America. Iran could not hit America if it wanted to. Furthermore, beyond that, because the biggest conversation that the Zionists would like to throw at us is, well, the enrichment program. Iran refuses to stop, or it did refuse to stop enriching its nuclear program. It refused to shut down its nuclear enrichment program entirely. And as long as they have which they currently do, I guess now not so much anymore. But as long as they have the capability to create a nuclear weapon, as long as they have the ability to create, weapons of mass destruction, so called, then they pose a threat. Well, it's like, well, they don't want to. They never wanted to. The only reason why they even were considering was the imminent threat of U.S. and Israeli strikes, which is happening right now. So that is sort of like the very basic debunking of the conversation. Iran does not pose a regional threat to America. It never has, and it really never will. Now that's changing because we're now engaged in a war of attrition, with no end in sight. Now we're engaged with actual war. Now that probably is going to change, because now this is going to obviously galvanize allies of Iran. It's going to obviously affect the global stage therein. But sans the current conflict, Iran does not pose a regional threat to America. Iran did not want to create a nuclear weapon to begin with. Iran was open to being diplomatic with America up until this particular point, and really up until this particular term of the Trump, we'll say, career, campaign, whatever. When Trump and the U.S. decided to collectively antagonize Iran with strikes against its nuclear facilities, and in the subsequent war that we're currently involved in. What is the real reason why we're going to war with Iran? It's very simple, and I'm sure you've all heard this before. So again, if there's going to be a lot of preaching to the choir going on in this particular video. There's going to be a lot of things that I'm saying that people have probably heard, but it's worth going over so that we can kind of flesh these things out in their totality in one particular video, in one particular show. The reason why we are going to war with Iran is very simple. We are going to war with Iran at the behest of Israel to continue enacting Israel's Greater Israel Project, which is a philosophy, which is a concept, which is a vision that was first notably articulated by a prolific revisionist Zionist by the name of, I'm going to get his name correctly here, Zeev Jabotinsky, I believe his name is, pronounced correctly, Zeev Jabotinsky, and was later, we'll say, amplified by the 1967 Six-Day War. This is why we're going to war with Iran. We're not going to war with Iran to stop terrorism. We're not going to war with Iran to somehow play, because there's even more novel takes coming out now that we're going to war with Iran to stifle Russia and China. These are all sort of ham-fisted attempts to try to contort and twist the public's perception of the conversation to a place that they can justify war with Iran. We are simply plainly going to war with Iran to help the expansionist endeavors of Israel, the Greater Israel Project. This is why after October 7th, Israel went full bore with the genocide in Gaza, went full bore with the attacks and the antagonizing of regional rivals within that area of the world. That is why we are doing the things that we are doing. It's that simple. And I think that right now we have to try to keep things as simple and as straightforward as possible, because there's a lot of people right now in the conversation trying to add all this esotericism and all this sort of depth to it that's just not necessary. And we will get into the conversation in a few minutes about things that we have to avoid when discussing this conversation. But first and foremost, keep it very, very simple. We're not going to war with Iran for terrorist reasons. We're going to war with Iran for Israel reasons. Now we're going to kind of begin to lean into the conversation of narratives that should be avoided, things that should be sort of recognized by people who are watching this stuff unfold rhetorically and politically. So another thing that's happening, along with the Zionists that are brazenly, and once again, you have the Mark Levins, well, it's the entire Republican Party at this point. It is the entire Republican Party. It is the entirety of the MAGA loyalist movement. It is everyone that's involved in the administration, who's a loyalist to the administration. Everyone within that fold is being the war drum, claiming that if you are counter-signaling this whatsoever, if you are dissenting from the support of Israel, if you're dissenting from the support of this war with Iran, that you are somehow a terrorist, that you are somehow a traitor to America, because you don't want American women and children, or men and women, to go over and kill innocent women and children for Israel. You don't want to try to completely decimate a country, go to war with a country for no other reason than for the interests of a foreign, hostile, parasitic state like Israel. While that's happening, there's another narrative, there's a counter narrative coming out, which is similar to the truth. It is somewhat the truth, but it is very specifically a watered down or a fettered version, we'll say. We'll be kind, because I don't think every single person who's saying these things or this particular line is necessarily a bad faith actor, though I think that many are. There's a fettered version of the truth, and the fettered version of the truth with regards to the conversation of the war with Iran, and really this is sort of a narrative that's been happening ever since October 7th, and ever since the sort of mainstreaming of counter-Zionist dialectics and narratives. The fettered version that we're hearing is, well, this is a conversation about the political concept of Zionism. This is a conversation about the political parties within Israel, the Likud party versus the Liberal party, Benjamin Netanyahu versus any other particular leader or figure in the Israeli government. This is a political conversation about political factionalism, and it has nothing to do with religion, and it has nothing to do with ethnicity, race, or a people group. That is another narrative. And who is saying this narrative specifically? Well, let's list some names. Candace Owens is saying this narrative. Tucker Carlson is saying this narrative. Recently, we have this new resignation from the administration by Joe Kent. He's pushing this narrative. Dave Smith is pushing this narrative. Who else? Who else can we? Even people that I'm more warm to. People like Alex Jones are pushing this narrative. And I like Alex Jones, by the way. I don't really want to put him with the rest of the people, but he is pushing this sort of narrative. But needless to say, many people are pushing this narrative. The narrative that the conversation that we are having or what was unfolding in the world today, is merely about Zionism versus everybody else. A vague political philosophy versus everyone else. They are conveniently or deliberately in some cases we'll say redirecting the conversation away from a broader conversation of world Jewry versus everybody else, or Jews versus Christians, or Jews versus white Western civilization, or Jews and how they relate, their political interests operate and were reflected in America. And the reason why it is paramount to identify that as the actual conversation is because you have people like Jonathan Greenblatt and people like Bill Ackman and people like Barry Weiss. All three people I just mentioned are liberal and or left-wing. They are liberal and or left-wing Jews, and they are all nominally in support of Israel, and they are all nominally in support of the war in Iran. I think Greenblatt, actually I don't think this is even the case, but I think Greenblatt might entertain, because he is a left-winger, so to speak, he might entertain some arguments from left-wingers, from left-wing Jews about how we should approach Iran. But fundamentally, I'm almost certain that Greenblatt is in favor of the war in Iran, and Barry Weiss absolutely is. She is a liberal lesbian, and you have Jonathan Greenblatt, a long-term Democrat, a lifelong Democrat turned Republican. All of a sudden, when Trump runs on a hyper pro-Israel platform in 2024, and you have Shabbos Kostenbaum, who is a literal social liberal, lifelong Democrat as well, mysteriously returned Republican during the rise of this new hyper-Zionist iteration of MAGA. So you have liberals, and then you go on the other side with people like Mark Levin and people like Ben Shapiro. Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, last time I checked, are pretty socially conservative Jews, right? You have Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, lifelong Republicans, lifelong conservatives, socially conservative, not about gay marriage, very traditional, very religious Jews, but they are Jews. And these two factions converge under one banner. They converge under one particular summation, one particular assertion that the state of Israel is a particular state for particular people that needs to be defended by all Jews. That is what they agree on. That is what they all agree on 100%. They also agree that there is really no significant difference. More or less, they agree. Now, Ben will play around with words because he's a wordsmith. He's really good at sophistry. But his alliance with Barry Weiss belies anything or portrays anything that he may or may not say any given data to kind of trick the Gentile, to sort of like hoodwink the Goyim. They all agree basically that left-wing or right-wing Jews, there is no distinction. They are just Jews. They are Jews for Jews. They are Jews for the Jewish people and for Jewish interests. And so another thing I'd like to advocate for people to pay attention to is do not buy into the misdirection. Do not buy into the sophistry. Do not buy into the monkey shines of this new burgeoning sort of, and I've been calling it this for a while, and I have to double down on this multi-demographic, multiracial, civic nationalist, populist anti-Zionism that's rising up. And there are some people in that coalition that I don't really have a problem with, but there are many that I do. And I don't really care if it's people that I agree with or don't agree with. If you are buying into this idea that this conversation has literally nothing to do with Jewry or Judaism, you're an idiot, okay? If you are just trying to parse this out as just merely it's just Zionism, and Zionism is an ethereal political belief, and because there's a organization, I forgot what it's called. It's an organization that's a subsidiary of Code Pink. Code Pink is a hyper left-wing organization, and I think it's called like Who Israel. It's like a website called like Who is Paid by Israel, or Who's Paying You, or Israel paid them, or something like that. And in the like preamble of the website, when you go to like the About section, they describe Zionism as a multi-ethnic. They call it a multi-ethnic ideological, a multi-ethnic form of like Middle Eastern or Israeli-centered imperialism or something ridiculous. They try to obfuscate the reality that this has everything to do with Jews, that this is a conversation about Jewry. Furthermore, we also have to realize that people are going to capitalize on this. People are going to capitalize on the fact that Israel is losing cachet. People are going to capitalize on the fact that Israel is no longer favored as it was 3 or 4 decades ago. If you look at the polling here, sans people above the age of 50 plus, right? 50, 60 years old, and even that's starting to wane. But by and large, if you're like under the age of 50 and or 40, you're not a fan of Israel. You're either neutral or you are seriously losing favor with Israel. Israel is losing cachet in America specifically, and in the broader Western world, and in globally. Israel is losing favor globally. So obviously, if Israel's losing favor globally, and there are political actors who have spent their entire lives, trying to be involved in politics, trying to ascend to the next political fiefdom, they're going to capitalize on this, some of which are still hardline supporters of Israel. The conversation of Joe Kent. People are somehow super happy that Joe Kent resigned from the Republican Party mysteriously. Really, interestingly enough, he decided to resign from the administration, at the worst possible time to be a Trump supporter. It just so happens, it's crazy. Trump is losing favor with this unfavorable war. This is not a controversial position. The polling says this. The left wing, which is by de facto, the left wing is the mainstream culture, by the way. The left wing is against Israel right now. So it actually benefits you to be a non-racialist or a moderated version of someone that is against Israel, which Joe Kent is posturing as being. Joe Kent recently said in an interview with Tucker Carlson that he is not against Israel. But he left because Israel's bringing us to war with Iran, and it's the same thing would happen in the Iraq war. Okay, well, you were defending Israel years ago. You tried to cancel Nicholas J. Fuentes years ago for his explicit denouncing of Israeli manipulation and Jewish manipulation within the American political system. You fucking piece of shit. Like, we all fucking know. You have these Johnny-come-latelys. You have these newcomers to the conversation, these fucking low IQ newcomers to the conversation who just got red-pilled fucking after October 7th or like a month, or literally they got red-pilled because of this war. Like, they just got red-pilled either after COVID, after October 7th, or after this, like, in the last 3 weeks with this Iranian war. Like, oh my God, dude, Israel's like a problem in America. Oh my God, Jews have a disproportionate sway in American politics. That's fucking crazy. It's like the rest of us like, yeah, we fucking told you. People like us told you that for years. We were having this conversation for years. Some of us louder than others. But one person in particular who's been identifying this consistently for 10 fucking years was Nicholas J. Fuentes. And the broader America First movement that he's cultivated behind him have been at the forefront of pushing against this Israeli manipulation. And everyone around him called him a liar, called him a Democrat, called him this, called him that, an extremist, unreasonable. And all the people, by the way, Candace Owens, Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, just name anyone else. Name anyone, literally anyone else now who's all of a sudden red-pilled on Israel, who's all of a sudden saying that we have to fight. They all voted for Trump in 2024. The America First, the authentic America First movement said, no, we are not voting for Trump because Trump is a Trojan horse for Jewish interests in particular. That is paramount function. That is what he primarily represents out of everything else. He primarily represents a Trojan horse for Jewish interests. That is what he represents. And then subsequently, he's going to be lax on or be meaningless on, castrate on the conversation of deportations, any meaningful America First legislation that will actually put forth, Christians, anything that will protect white people, anything that's really meaningfully America First, right-wing, Christian, nationalist, any of that. And he has dropped the ball on all those things, as I elucidated in my last update video. So, get some more water. It must be understood that all these people, these civic nationalists, Johnny-come-latelys, these newcomers to the conversation of anti-white politics, these newcomers to the conversation of Israeli control, these newcomers, these people that literally voted for Trump and tried to denounce people that were calling this out viciously, fervently during the 2024 election, they must be actually shamed and in many ways ignored. They must be ignored. We don't need civic nationalists milquetoast, moderated critiques of Israel right now. It's not about just Israel or political theory or, we're just anti-war, vaguely anti-war. No, war actually has a purpose, particularly if you are an empire. People, and I keep hearing this stupid fucking refrain still. Oh, we're a constitutional republic if we can keep it. No, the republic is dead. We are not a constitutional republic. We're a fucking empire. We're a multiracial empire. And unfortunately, we're a fucking dying multiracial empire. If we want to try to maintain the empire, we want to try to regain the empire, we have to start thinking in imperial terms. And for an empire, for any nation, war has a purpose. The purpose is to exalt your nation's will, your nation's interests, to secure the realm, the region of your country. That is the reason for war. So war has a purpose. This war is just against our interests. This war is illegitimate. This war is a tool for a parasitic global growing world power in the form of Israel to come to fruition, to secure and codify regional power in the Middle East and project, yes, not just Zionists, but project global Jewish multi-partisan interests in the world to capture the world and direct the world as Israel sees fit, using America and many other nations as apparatchiks and vassals for that ends. That is what is happening, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we have to fucking wake up to. That is the reality. And I'm a little passionate about this right now. I'm going to get a little angry about this because people like me and others have been seeing this for years. We have seen the subversion of the Republican Party. We have seen the subversion of the mainstream right wing. We have seen people come into the fold of nationalism. And we've even tried to play ball with some people sometimes. We even tried to engage. As many of you guys know, I used to work for the Republican Party. I used to be a part of MAGA. I gave it a chance. I gave the civic nationalist coalition a chance. It is horseshit. It is a fugazi. It is vaporware. It is not meant to change anything. It is not meant to salvage America. Rather, it is meant to be used as a persuasive figurative carrot being dangled in our faces to lull us back into the hands of the establishment, to lull us back into a neoliberal, multiracial, colorblind, meritocratic, utterly ineffective uniparty system that will only seek to keep us as slaves playing this back and forth left wing versus right wing nonsense that really means nothing. We're just two liberal parties, bitching about how liberal or not liberal we want things to be, basically, but while still maintaining liberalism. While the actual oligarchs, the bipartisan oligarchs, the globalists, and yes, many of which are Jews and are philo-Semitic and have Jewish interests at the forefront of their political ambitions, rule over us. That is the reality, ladies and gentlemen, of what exactly is happening. That is what's going on, guys. That is what's going on. So, in closing, I think it's a good place to land this show, land this update video. Going forward, we must continue. And I haven't decided because I don't want every single video to be this, but I will spend a considerable amount of time on my X Spaces as well as videos discussing the Iran war, discussing what's going on. There's a lot to go into. I just wanted to open this up. There will be more videos going forward, more shows, more update videos, more episodes, if you will, discussing this conversation. But going forward, understand the following. We cannot lose, as I said in my last update video, my literal last episode, last update video, however you want to qualify it. We cannot lose sight of the fact that Israel and Jewry are the number one ops, the number one threats facing Western civilization, facing the globe, quite frankly. Simultaneously, we must be discerning, and we must be clever, and we must be intelligent about who exactly is pushing what exact narratives. It is not anti-warism. It is not libertarianism. It is not leftism. It is not broad coalitional whatever the fuck. It is Christian, pro-white, America first, Western chauvinistic resistance against world Jewry. And that is what it is. If you're not on board with that, you're either an op or you're the fucking enemy.